This man seems to have gone mad. Instead of taking the fresh, plump squid to the seafood market to sell for money, he actually used it as nesting material. But that wasn't the end of it. He also asked his daughter to chop up all the fresh fish meat to use as bait for today. However, these fish pieces weren't put into bamboo traps. They were to be used in a homemade shell trap. The bait was tied to the shells, which the fisherman then took to the deep sea, placing them in the crevices at the bottom of the coral reefs. These are places where fish frequently visit, so he scattered fish pieces near the traps he had set. Today, they prepared 7 or 8 such traps, all arranged by the father at different fishing spots, either in gaps between large coral clusters or in areas with abundant seagrass. Sure enough, the father's experience showed every spot he chose was teeming with fish. Usually, before they even left, the fish were already biting. After setting up the traps, they didn't rush to retrieve them. They patiently waited for 2 days before returning to the sea. The scenery here is beautiful and the water is crystal clear. Even if you don't remember the exact fishing spots, you can quickly find the right place again. But something was off today. They found the traps easily, but there were no fish inside. The shells were snow white, as if they had just been polished. But the bait and the expected catch were all gone. Even worse, the second shell was in the same condition. Could it be that the fish now have superpowers? The third trap made him completely lose hope. 3 empty shells in a row, marking the most humiliating moment of his fishing career. He was determined to see if he would catch a single fish today, but there was a turning point. There was finally a fish in the 4th trap. Seeing the little fish trying to escape, if he had arrived 2 minutes later, it would have been another empty shell. The fisherman, now full of energy, quickly subdued the big fish. It was a grouper, weighing at least 8 pounds. He pulled it onto the boat, and at last, a long smile appeared on his face. It turns out today's luck was waiting for this moment. At the market price of 2,000 pesos per pound, this grouper would be worth at least 15,000 pesos, instantly covering the losses. From the previous attempts, the fisherman removed the hook and put the fish in the water tank. With this big catch to secure his day, he was reinvigorated. Looking at the trap in front of him, he was so happy that he couldn't stop waving his hands. This big fish was a tiger grouper. It lay motionless as if it were dead, but when he grabbed it, it suddenly came to life, struggling so hard that it knocked off a piece of coral. The fisherman took the fish along with the coral, planning to make it into a decoration at home, putting the fish into the water tank. Today's earnings had already exceeded 40,000 pesos. As he spoke, the father dove into the sea again, searching for the last trap. This time, he found himself in a coral cave, and as he skillfully moved inside, a fancy pattern fish came into view. It turned out to be a humpback grouper. This type of fish is even more valuable than the tiger grouper. A wild one can sell for 6,000 pesos per pound, and this one was particularly large. 3 groupers of fortune. Aren't you envious? If you enjoy watching, like and follow. This time, the fisherman went even crazier. He firmly held onto a lobster and threw it into the water as bait. But one lobster wasn't enough. He threw the entire bag of lobsters into the sea. In an instant, several thousand pesos were gone. You've heard of catching lobsters, but have you ever heard of using lobsters to catch fish? Even if fish are caught, how can you be sure they're worth more than the lobsters? The father shook his head, worried about a huge loss, and decided to split up with his son to cover more ground. The father put on his diving suit and went underwater to fish. He came across a small but ink-filled squid, which squirted black ink everywhere. In an attempt to obscure his vision, this little trick might work on sea creatures, but it's ineffective against humans. Within half a minute, the squid was caught and brought onto the boat. In the water, it wasn't obvious, but now that it's out, the squid weighed at least 15 pounds. Quickly, the father targeted a new quarry, and with one shot, pinned it down. The creature emitted a large cloud of dense black fog and tried to escape. The father wasn't panicked and intercepted it as it neared the surface. The squid kept struggling until the ink was completely exhausted and finally stopped. The next target was more cunning, hiding under a coral reef, but the fisherman's sharp eyes spotted it immediately. The father pulled it out, and the squid, terrified, forgot to squirt ink. Thus, within an hour, 3 large squids were on board. Meanwhile, the son finally made his first catch of the day. Unfortunately, after such a long wait, he only caught a small snapper, which wasn't as valuable as the lobsters. The second catch was a pleasant surprise. It was a large fish, a Plectropomus areolatus. This fish is valued just below the 4,000 pesos per pound caro trout. With such a big one, it could easily be worth 30,000 pesos. The father was now convinced that the risk was worth it. This single fish alone could cover the cost. It seemed the son's luck wasn't over. Quietly, they caught another 4-pound grouper, adding another substantial sum to their haul. The subsequent catches were even better. They landed another large Platypus arealis with its large size and good appearance. How much do you think it's worth? Feel free to discuss your estimates in the comments. The siblings had incredible luck today. The brother had just caught a fiery red Carol trout, when the sister immediately followed with an even larger Carol trout. Before they had a chance to rest, another Lajanus argentimiculatus was magically hauled up by the brother. The siblings continued fishing endlessly, with every catch being a delicious and expensive big fish. It's sad that the rougher the waves, the more valuable the fish. Today, this Filipino brother and sister faced the waves and made their way to their chosen fishing spot. For a thrilling fishing adventure, they had prepared for this, spending a bit of money on a bag of stinky dead fish from the market, which they cut into large chunks to use as bait. Each took a fishing line and simultaneously cast their lines into the sea for a silent competition to see who would catch a fish first. A minute later, the brother suddenly jerked his line and quickly reeled it in. At first, it seemed a bit difficult, but it got easier as he went along. Just as the brother was about to bring the fish up, the sister also had some action on her side. Unfortunately, despite the sister's efforts, she couldn't outpace the brother, who had been working on his catch for a while. The brother pulled up a 1 or 2 pound grouper. Oh small, a grouper is worth 10 small fish. Before the brother could even unhook his fish, the sister's fish surfaced, and it was even more valuable. At 1 pound Carol trout. Carol trout is a prize variety with 500 pesos per pound. To catch one so easily was a remarkable achievement. The fishing trip wasn't over yet. As the sky darkened, they needed to catch a boatload of satisfactory fish. Before the heavy rain arrived, they cast their lines again, with rhythmic shaking, and the lines quickly went out. This time, the sister caught a fish first. Seeing her excited expression, it was clear she had a big catch. However, catching big fish has its downsides. The sister struggled to control the line. Seeing this, I imagine Filipino fishermen don't have to worry about scapulohumeral periarthritis. While the sister was still wrestling with her fish, the brother also had action on his end. The big fish suddenly pulled so hard it nearly dragged him in. Despite the size of the fish, the brother, oh small, had immense strength. As he fought the big fish, the sister's battle ended first, and she won this round. Unfortunately, her fish was a common and less valuable Lephrhinus hematopterus. Just as the sister was lost in thought, the brother made a comeback, managing to handle several powerful attacks from the big fish and finally subdued it. The final retrieval was incredibly smooth. Look at this red beauty, an 8-pound Carol trout. The brother was so thrilled he jumped up and down. This was the most valuable catch so far, worth more than a month's salary from turning screws. No wonder these fishermen work so diligently every day. The siblings didn't rest and cast their lines again. Who would catch the next fish? 2 minutes later, the brother caught a fish. Though the camera was foggy, his effort was visible while he was battling the big fish. The sister also yanked her line hard. With 2.5 years more fishing experience, the sister quickly brought up the fish. Despite almost being pulled down herself, she finished the fight first. Oh my goodness, another Carol trout, weighing 6 pounds. The brother looked on enviously, but his fish didn't make him wait too long either. It was another large red fish, though he was an economical Lajanus argentimiculatus. He was a bit disappointed, having been thoroughly beaten by his sister this time. As the waves grew rougher and the boat rocked continuously, the siblings were too absorbed in their excitement to think about taking shelter from the rain. Once again, the brother caught a fish first. For some reason, it seemed as if the fish were catching him. Fortunately, the final catch didn't go to waste. A large Carol trout, several pounds worth. The larger the waves, the more valuable the fish. Getting soaked didn't matter, as long as the catches were so satisfying. Before the hook could be removed, the sister caught another big fish, a 4-pound Lephrhinus hematopterus, though not as valuable as the Carol trout. It was delicious and enough for a hearty meal for a family of 3. By now, the water tank was filled with various big fish, with the Carol trout standing out as a symbol of joy. To keep them fresh, they prepared a long needle to vent the fish's stomach before continuing to fish. The sister caught another fish, and today's catches were all large. As long as the hook didn't slip, everything was perfect. Another giant Carol trout was pulled up. The sister was so happy she hugged it and showed it around before unhooking it and putting it in the water tank. Soon, they had a boatload of fish, but fishing wasn't over yet. In a blink of an eye, the brother pulled out another fish, a Lethrhinus hematopterus. Though catching so many of these was getting a bit dull, it was still nice to catch another fish. After making over 10,000 pesos, they wanted to fish a bit longer, but the rain intensified. For safety, they quickly packed up and ran to the seafood wholesale market. Each carried a Carol trout to be weighed. Selling these to fish was enough for the day. The rest were packed to take home for soup. The market vendor handed them a stack of colorful bills. They counted them over and over, although they couldn't see the exact amount. The smiles on their faces showed it was surely a satisfying money. Friends in front of the screen, take a guess. How much are these Carol trout worth in the Philippines? If you enjoyed this, like and follow. Follow me to discover a new world every day.